As I said, 1 December, 20th Air Force and the ICBM forces move into Global Strike Command. 1 February, 8th Air Force moves under General Klotz in Air Force Global Strike Command. 8/10. When I came to the Pentagon 2 years ago, and in fact, I was closing on my mortgage on my house in Clifton, Virginia, when we were closing a weapons storage area at Minot we would soon regret. So I walked in about 96 hours into the unauthorized munitions transfer. So this has been my life for the last 2 years. I walked into an organization in the A35 that had been freshly reorganized, further depressing space and nuclear deeper into the A35 with consequence. It was the 1-star working for the 2-star who worked for the 3-star A35. Soon after that, the 2-star, classmate of mine, good friend, Hoot Gibson, he says, Don, I don't think this is going to work anymore, the way we're doing this. You know, it's, you're working for me inside his organization, you know, given what was going on, that didn't seem right. So we went to General Darnell. And so about 6 months after I got there, I began working for the 3-star. So I was directly reporting to the A35. And we made up a new name. I mean, if he was plans, operations, and requirements, I became nuclear plans, operations, and requirements. Clever. Then the chief and secretary were, we transitioned our leadership in our Air Force, and a few months later, the chief of staff and the secretary decided to stand up an 810. What we achieved 6 months, or back in February, was that we finally had a general officer exclusively focused on the nuclear program. Somebody was accountable on the air staff for nuclear, if you will. Actually, lots of guys are accountable for that, but we had one guy that was his focus, certainly in his view, was nuclear all the time. And then when the chief stood up 810, the organizing principle, having looked at the history, we used to have an XON, that got good marks. Some of the recent reorganizations gave too much into XON or XOS or whatever the names were in the previous variants. Within the 810, my organizing principle was, if you do nuclear all the time, you wear my patch. If you do nuclear part-time, I don't want you in the organization. I'll be a demanding customer. That didn't quite work, even in the A47. Some great talented guys in A47 that are principally nuclear folks, a couple of chiefs in particular, but given the critical mass that already exists in A47, I had to have a special relationship with them so that I would have great access to them, knowing their daily focus on nuclear. So I had to make some exceptions to my organizing principle. But the reality is, the chief knows who is the process owner for what. So General Reno gets the direct email from the chief, and the chief CCs me. But the A1, 2, 3, you write them, everybody's got equities in nuclear. And, I'm backing up everybody. Some things I'm on point. I'm certainly trying to play, orchestrator, integrator. And that's a responsibility that I've got, so that I support all the field commanders and support the 2 letters to ensure that we're all, pulling with as much energy as we can in the right direction, that we're getting resourced the way we need to. Certainly helps to be the #1 priority in the Air Force strategic plan, reinvigorating the nuclear enterprise. In fact, let me talk about that for a second. I've got senior guys coming up to me 6 months ago, and they say, Don, could you write the criteria for reinvigoration? I think we're being reinvigorated to death. When are we going to turn the page? When's the pendulum going to swing? You pick the metaphor. We are on a journey where reinvigoration is uneven at this time. We have made significant progress, and I'm working through some of that with you right now. But there's more to be done, and frankly, I would draw another line intersecting with reinvigoration. I would call it normalizing. The nuclear roadmap that we wrote was about governance. When you read it, almost everything that we said we would do is tied to a change in policy. So we fortified policy as the underpinning. If you do everything in the roadmap, you don't get us there. But you do ensure that the policy is better than it was, and it sets the conditions to be successful in the nuclear enterprise. But that requirement to work the policy has been substantial and foundational in the work that we've done. I had about 40 guys in April helping me. Got about 150 people's worth of work. Had 40 in April, 60 in June. I have about 110, 120. I got some civilians to hire, but I'm doing pretty good right now. So we're getting there. The other critical pivotal movement that we did, pivotal muscle movement that we did, was converging all of nuclear sustainment and Air Force Materiel Command, and specifically the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. If I've got my numbers right, I think General Thomas had about 27 federal employees, that's uniform and civilians, And now, not necessarily all at Kirtland, but it's about a tenfold increase in his manpower in order to help him. Frankly, I think we've been writing a lot of checks that General Thomas has had to work hard to cash, because there's so much, we're depending so much on the Nuclear Weapons Center and Air Force Materiel Command, and it is capacity that he has had to build in order to meet those challenges. So he's done a fantastic job. But what this overcomes for us are decisions that we made in the 90s, frankly, as a function of BRAC, where in San Antonio we had a great concentration of nuclear expertise that, for good and valid reasons at the time, not fully appreciating or respecting the second and third order consequences, we started to cut up that San Antonio piece. And fantastically, civilians with great experience weren't necessarily going to move to other places. And so we lost that concentration of expertise. We need to bring it back. And it's not that we have to concentrate everything in a particular zip code, but we do want to concentrate the authorities in order to achieve the 2009 version of what we had in the early 90s. And so that's fantastic initiative. Another thing we did was we had this in motion before Mr. Donnelly and Chief Schwartz came in, but it was to move all the weapons storage areas under the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. We deliberately created a seam. Now I got to tell you, the chief gets mail on this one on a regular basis about how we don't have unity of command as a consequence of this. And I've got, my partner is a 3-time former SAC wing commander, retired as a J5 out of STRATCOM. So he is a nuclear bomber wing commander from SAC. And he had misgivings about this because he lived or died as a wing commander on generation. And, it starts in the weapons storage area for the nuclear business. But we deliberately created the seam, and we chose to value, the nurturing of the 2W2 career field for one, having common standards or someone responsible for enforcing common standards across all of the weapons storage areas. So by creating the seam, we've got to work through the adverse consequences of that in pursuit of the virtues of the reorganization that we put in motion. So that has moved along. It will be complete. I think the last unit moves on the 1st of November. I can't remember that for sure. But you'd have to check my work on that. But that's moving along, and it needs close monitoring to make sure that we get that, just that we achieve General Hoffman's objectives, and that that General Klotz is continues to be satisfied that it's working just the way we intended it to work. So that's out there, and an important initiative. Inspection. We changed inspection a lot. Minot, the 5th Bomb Wing, had an NSI within about 60 days or so, 60, 90 days, to the moment that they had exposed a weakness that was just not a Minot weakness, but a systemic weakness in our Air Force nuclear enterprise. Now, a commander, I think, has a range of sensors in order to know and calculate how combat ready and effective his unit is. Inspection is one of those mechanisms by which he or she measures the readiness of their unit. And inspection did not expose the osteoporosis that existed in our bone density for nuclear. So we needed to give attention to this. We've taken a few steps. We have a common training program. Every inspector that will be part of a nuclear surety inspection team must go through a course in a particular zip code and get the same stuff. Everybody does across all MAJCOMs. Each one of those inspectors is certified by their MAJCOM commander. We do 100% oversight by the Air Force Inspection Agency for every Air Force nuclear surety inspection. We used to do 15 to 25%. Now it's 100%. We built a core team of about 20 folks who join every MAJCOM IG team. They will all eventually PCS into Kirtland. In the meantime, they have been identified, and they get on a jet and merge with whatever MAJCOM team is going to do an NSI, and they provide a level of continuity that ensures that common standards are applied in a common way across a variety of MAJCOMs with nuclear responsibilities. Our self-inspection program, I can't tell you. I'm not doing a lot myself to interject myself in that. But when Admiral Donald's team was doing its investigation of the Air Force, and I can tell you, it was I mean, if you haven't felt the heat of the raging fire, I worry about this. I worry that the follow-on echelons of command, I'm losing sleep over this right now, that the follow-on echelons of command who have not felt the heat, the direct heat of the raging fire, or have not held the wire that had fantastic amperage going through it over the last 2 years, then I don't know how well we're conditioning you to take your responsibilities on. But I can tell you that when the Donald team was doing their thing, they're sitting down with General Darnell and me. And, you know, it's kind of like the sheepdog and the coyote. We had a cup of coffee, we're making nice talk, la, 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 you know. Suddenly a bell goes off, and you know, the guys were really aggressive. And so one guy says, your wing commanders are sitting back and they're waiting for an inspection team to tell them what's wrong with their unit. I said, that's not true. I've been a wing commander, he's been a wing commander. I woke up every day, and I thought my job was to go find trouble. I went out, I looked for trouble, I found trouble, I fixed trouble, I looked for more trouble. He says, yeah, but you know what? You didn't document it. You didn't follow up, you didn't cross-talk it with your other wing commanders, and if it was important for you to fix, you should have done those things. Okay, well, I thought my house was in order, you know, where I was. But it's true, we never looked at this as a big system where we learn from each other. We have processes where we're supposed to distribute, and we do, you know, inspection reports, but I don't know how much impact that has. So one of the other initiatives that we have is to do root cause analysis. We haven't reached fully in the right direction for this. We codified this in 90-201, certainly not to my satisfaction, but what we did was we kind of say for critical and major errors, we're going to do root cause analysis. And I worry that something less significant than that threshold may be setting the conditions for failure. But we have not established how we will do root cause analysis so that we're doing it consistently across MAGCOMs, and we're not effectively distributing the results of root cause analysis yet for us to see ourselves as a system that learns effectively from each other, because the stakes are high, and that would benefit all of us if we can get there. So it's a work in progress, but more work to do. We baselined all PME, brought everybody in Labor Day weekend a year ago. Seemed like a good time, everybody was available, what the heck. So we brought them in, we baselined all the training and education, and we then were committed through the course of last year to change professional military education. And we have done that. So beginning this past school year, all of the modules, certainly in the year-long PMEs, had been redesigned before class began. There are more variations on the nuclear theme at some of the schools in terms of electives. Enlisted PME has nuclear content as well. We've tried to right-size this for the different schools, and all of it will be in place by the spring, but much of it is in place now. But of course, PME does not touch 100% of our Air Force, but it's something that needed to be tended to. We also baselined every other program that the MAGCOMs had. And what we didn't do, though, is we didn't establish a gatekeeper, so we've had leakage. We went through and established all of these, you know, what's everybody doing? Let's shed the things that aren't as good as this one. Let's try to accredit this one so that everybody would be drawn to it. We need to write the policy that kind of puts into force how we attend these courses, because there isn't enough of a forcing function to make that stuff come together. But to have in our common field of view everything that's out there, and to see that more or less everything is moving in the right direction with regard to those different training programs, and to have an overarching Air Education and Training Command presence that is relevant, even if they don't have command authority over all these programs, is better than what we had before. So it's still a work in progress, but moving forward.